The Broken Ear is adventure number 6 of Tintin, created by Hergé. Each page of the comic was published once a week via a Belgian newspaper from 1935 to 1937. In 1943, Hergé redrew and colorized the comic, as he would do with all but one of the early Tintin volumes. 54 years after it was first published, it was the 9th adventure to be adapted for television in 1991. The first 16.5 pages were featured in Part 1, and Part 2 uses the remaining 45 pages. How faithful was the adaptation? Let's see if we can spot the differences. The janitor/security guard starts cleaning the museum straight after he closes it for the night, switching off the lights to each room once he dusts the various artifacts. It is then, as he is presumably about to go home, that he notices the theft of the Arumbayan idol. And, as in the comic, Tintin hears about the theft via the radio while having a bath. However, in the comic, the janitor doesn't clean the museum or sees the idol is missing until the very next morning.
The idol was there at 8:05 and not there at 8:06.
Precisely!
A relatively minor difference, but noteworthy, between the English translation of the comic and the English dub of the episode is that the wooden statue is always referred to as a fetish. As this is more or less another word for idol, and as the word fetish is much more associated with connotations of a sexual nature, it is very understandable why the word idol was substituted.
Why would somebody steal a worthless idol?
Why, the same reason anyone commits a crime.
What reason is that?
Because they're criminals!
The next morning, to the caretaker's astonishment, the idol has returned, with a note claiming the culprit only stole it to fulfill a bet. In the episode, the idol is discovered while Tintin and the Thompsons are investigating at the museum, which may or may not have been easier than breaking into the museum in the middle of the night. While reading an article about the idol, Tintin notices that the returned statue's ear is intact, and must therefore be fake. In the comic, Tintin knew from first glance at the museum that it was a fake, because he had already read an article the previous day. Also, despite being in their company at the time, he didn't bother to mention this to either the police, the museum staff, or the press.
Ow! Pardon me, sir.
Tintin meets the deceased Mr. Balthazar's parrot while investigating his room. In the comic, the parrot is mentioned but not seen until the scene after this one.
Great greedy guts.
I beg your pardon?
I see nothing, senor.
Great greedy guts.
A short scene not included in the episode involves one of Hergé's many comical professors finding the parrot. The unnamed man is very short-sighted, using his walking cane as an umbrella and accidentally putting on a woman's fur coat. When he sees the talking bird perched on a streetlight, he thinks it is a man.
I hope this is the right bird.
Great greedy guts.
It sure is.
Snowy is badly scratched up by the parrot before it flies out the window. In the episode, he is not harmed at all.
Great greedy guts.
When Tintin catches Ramon in his apartment, he switches off the light when he sees him produce a dagger, causing Ramon to very narrowly miss Tintin's arm. The scene then ends, and although it is not shown or heard, we are to assume Ramon fled the flat. In the comic, Tintin has a gun and so briefly talks to Ramon before his partner in crime, Alonso, switches off the light. The dagger still misses Tintin and doesn't even put a hole in his pajamas this time.
Come on, chaps. Let's get to the bottom of this.
Two men are with Tintin when the villains try to hit him with their car, and it is one of these men who took note of their number plate. In the episode, there are no witnesses, and Tintin saw the number plate himself.
Obviously the wrong number.
Alonso learns that Rodrigo Tortilla is about to sail away to South America. Turning on the radio, they hear that due to a dock workers' strike, all ship departures will now be delayed by a day. In the episode, Rodrigo's surname is changed to Lopez, and the dock workers' strike was foreshadowed in a previous scene. However, rather than call to find out if Lopez is still at his hotel, Alonso knows he will already have booked a cabin on a ship bound for South America, and so he phones a travel agency to reserve a space for he and Ramon.
Won't our old cellmate be surprised to see us again?
During the voyage, the villains suspect two men of being Tintin in disguise. They attack the fat man with a wig during the daytime in a public place. In the comic, they make the sensible decision of waiting till nightfall and hide their faces. However, the next day they are much less cautious and grab an old man during the day without covering their faces.
The fool! He has disguised himself, but forgot to disguise his dog.
Tintin has disguised himself as one of the ship's stewards, and in the comic blacks his face and hands and wears a wig. This was naturally viewed as being too politically incorrect, and thus in the episode he instead just wears a moustache and a wig. Incidentally, the English dub completely ruins the potential surprise that the steward is Tintin, as his voice actor didn't even bother to disguise his voice.
First call for dinner!
Alonso pays the colonel once he unlocks their handcuffs, suggesting he only let them go because they bribed him. This is not shown to happen in the comic, as it appears the colonel may be an old friend of the villains.
Senor Tintin is a clever one.
See, but even a clever one can be tricked, Ramon.
After Tintin is arrested because someone switched his suitcase with one containing bombs, the ship's captain is given a letter telling him that the young reporter has decided to stay. The next day, our hero's firing squad is interrupted 3 times. First, by General Tapioca being deposed by General Alcazar's revolution. Secondly, by a report that General Alcazar's revolution has actually failed, and third, because the rifles have been sabotaged and thus do not work. None of this happens in the episode.
Ready! Aim!
While waiting for the firing squad's guns to be repaired, Tintin and the captain spend half an hour drinking brandy, and naturally both become drunk. As they are staggering back to the wall, Tintin starts shouting, for some reason, "Long live General Alcazar." This is why, once Alcazar's revolution succeeds, Tintin is given the position of colonel, as all revolutionaries are cheering him as a heroic patriot. Considering Captain Haddock's drunken behaviour was severely toned down in this TV series, it is no surprise that this plot point of our hero getting drunk was totally removed. He instead gets given the rank of Alcazar's aide simply because he was about to be executed under the country's former dictator.
My man tells me you were to be executed.
That's true.
Good! Any friend of the revolution is a friend of General Alcazar's.
The character of Colonel Diaz does not appear in the episode, nor does his many assassination attempts as revenge for Alcazar demoting him to corporal in favour of Tintin. The closest he comes to killing the general is when an explosion he causes gives Alcazar jaundice, which is funny in context as the general had only just finished telling Tintin that he had caused one of his officers to suffer from the skin yellowing disease, after he played a game of shoot someone in the face with a gun loaded with blanks. In the episode, Alonso and Ramon kidnap Tintin themselves, but in the comic they had 2 other men do it for them. How Tintin Escapes is also very different. A ball of lightning, a la another Tintin adventure, bursts into the shack and blasts Tintin out of the window, ripping up all the characters' clothes in the process. He then knocks the villains out by throwing rocks at their heads. In the episode, Snowy sneaks into the shack and chews through the rope binding Tintin's hands. Once freed, he successfully fights his way out and drives off in their car.
We've got him now.
The next 16 pages of the comic were not included in this adaptation. Our hero takes Alonso and Ramon to jail, but they very quickly manage to escape. He then covers for the general while he is recovering from an attack of jaundice. A Mr. Trickler offers a large sum of money if the general agrees to invade their neighbouring territory, so that Trickler's company can take its oil. Tintin refuses, and so Trickler hires a man named Pablo to kill him. This fails thanks to Ramon, and as Tintin is willing to let Pablo go, the assassin vows to repay his forgiveness. Our hero is then arrested as Trickler tricks Alcazar into thinking Tintin is plotting against him. Tintin is broken out of prison by Pablo and is chased for a couple of days by the military until he finally outswims them. The reason for this lengthy absence was likely done as it has nothing to do with Tintin's mission to find the wooden idol.
I want to find the Arumbayas.
You should not go there. The Arumbayas do not like strangers. Okay, senor.
Yet another sequence missing from the episode happens just after Tintin discovers the location of the Arumbayas, the natives who made the idol, and Ridgewell, the explorer who decided to turn his back on civilization and live with the Arumbayas. Before getting back to the village, they are attacked by a rival tribe and taken back to their camp, where they escape thanks to Ridgewell's skill as a ventriloquist. Meanwhile, Snowy is almost sacrificed by the Arumbaya's witch doctor.
Oh! Ow! I'm very sorry. I should never have started to teach them golf.
The story of the theft of the diamond that is hidden inside the idol is shown via a 2-minute flashback told by the Arumbaya's chief. But in the comic it is told to us via 3 very long speech bubbles by Ridgewell.
So Lopez stole the gemstone and hid it in the idol.
On his way out of the jungle, Tintin is caught once again by Ramon and Alonso, who have deserted from the nearby army. The result of the fight is once again 2-0 to Tintin, but as he doesn't tie Alonso up tight enough, the villain manages to knock him into the water, where he is almost chewed up by piranhas. It takes several days for the young man to get back to town, and then he has to wait another week before he can get a boat back to Europe. None of this happens in the episode.
Looking for this idol is like finding a needle in a... Great snakes! That's fantastic!
The final notable difference is the fate of Ramon and Alonso. When the idol breaks on the deck of the ship and the diamond hidden inside goes overboard, the 3 men struggle against the railings and fall into the sea. In the episode, the villains only have themselves to blame for the loss of the gem, as Tintin does catch it, but Alonso very stupidly steps on his hand, causing him to drop it. They survive in the adaptation, but in the original story they drown, and are even seen being dragged away by devilish-looking creatures. Seriously though, how was Tintin able to survive a week in South America? Did he have a fistful of traveller's checks? And not only manage to feed himself and his dog, but also buy a new set of clothes?
Leave me alone!